The Grand Assembly Hall of the Intergalactic Coalition Academy was designed to impress, which meant it was designed to make everyone feel simultaneously awed and slightly uncomfortable. The ceiling arced impossibly high, reinforced transparent panels showing the slow rotation of the neutral planet below. Banners representing 63 different species lined the walls, and the air filtration system was working overtime to accommodate atmospheric preferences ranging from oxygen-rich to methane-based. Ethan Rivera sat in the human section, surrounded by his fellow fourth-year students, and tried to ignore the nervous energy crackling through the crowd. Today was pairing day, the moment every academy student had been anticipating and dreading in equal measure since arrival. After 3 years of general training, everyone would be assigned a companion partner from another species. The partnerships would last through final year training and, ideally, into their careers afterward. The companion system was the Academy's cornerstone philosophy, practical cooperation between species built through genuine partnership. The pairings were supposedly based on complex compatibility algorithms that considered temperament, skills, goals, and psychological profiles. The system had a 92% success rate, which was impressive until you remembered that 8% of pairings ended in spectacular failure. Ethan watched as names were called and partners matched. His roommate Jake was paired with a methodical Lyrian scholar, perfect for Jake's patient, detail-oriented approach. Maya, his study partner, got matched with a Centaurian engineer with complementary technical skills. Around him, students shook hands, bowed, or performed whatever greeting gestures their species favored, most looking pleased or at least accepting of their matches. Ethan had prepared for this. 3 years at the academy, solid grades in engineering, respectable scores in combat training, no major disciplinary issues. He was expecting someone compatible, maybe another human if the pool was thin, perhaps a Centaurian or Lyrian if they were going for cross-species cooperation. Something manageable, something that wouldn't derail his carefully planned career trajectory. Ethan Rivera, human, the coordinator announced, her voice carrying through the assembly with the authority of someone who'd done this ceremony approximately 200 times. She was a Viridian, her silver skin reflecting the ambient light in patterns that Ethan's xenobiology classes said indicated calm professionalism. Paired with. She paused, just for a second but long enough that Ethan noticed. The coordinator's reflective patterns shifted to something his classes had not covered, but his instincts identified as concern mixed with amusement. Princess Zara of the Syrathi Dominion. The assembly didn't go completely silent. That would have been melodramatic. But there was definitely a noticeable dip in ambient noise, followed immediately by an increase in whispered conversations. Ethan heard Jake mutter, "Oh shit," beside him, which was not encouraging. Ethan knew exactly 3 things about the Syrathi. They were known as fearsome warriors, they valued independence above almost everything else, and their homeworld had rejected coalition membership twice before finally agreeing to limited participation. He also knew one very specific thing about Princess Zara. She was notorious. In his 3 years at the academy, Ethan had heard stories. Princess Zara had been through 4 previous companion pairings, all of which had ended in failure. She'd been censured at least twice for unauthorized modifications to training equipment. She'd once reprogrammed an entire combat simulation just to prove it was boring as designed. And she'd publicly rejected a courtship proposal from Prince Valorian of Centauria, with a cutting speech about his fundamental lack of imagination that had become legendary in the Academy's social circles. Ethan looked toward the Syrathi section and found her immediately, partly because she was impossible to miss and partly because she was already looking directly at him. Princess Zara was tall even by Syrathi standards, probably 6.5 feet, with silver-blue skin that seemed to shimmer with barely contained energy. Her ears were long and elegantly pointed, sweeping back from her head like a predatory bird's wings. She wore the standard academy uniform, but she'd modified it. Sleeves removed, collar adjusted, enough small violations of dress code to be noticeable while remaining just barely acceptable. And she was grinning at him. Not a polite, nice to meet you smile. A grin that suggested she'd just been handed something entertaining and was already planning how to play with it. She moved before Ethan could fully process what was happening. Instead of walking down the stairs like a normal person, she vaulted over 3 rows of seats with predatory grace, landed in the aisle with barely a sound, and covered the distance to Ethan's section in maybe 5 seconds. She stopped directly in front of him, still grinning, and extended her hand. Her grip when he took it was strong enough to make a point without quite hurting. "Hello, partner, try to keep up." Ethan shook her hand, his brain trying to catch up with the situation. "I'm Ethan. Nice to meet you. I know who you are. I requested you specifically." She said this casually, like commenting on the weather, while students around them stared in open shock. Ethan blinked. "You what?" "Requested you. After the 4th pairing disaster, which wasn't entirely my fault, though they blamed me anyway. The administration agreed to let me choose my next companion, provided I made a reasonable choice." Her grin widened. "You're reasonable, mostly." "I don't understand." "You reprogrammed a Level 7 combat simulation last year to introduce randomized terrain modifications and adaptive enemy behavior. Made it actually challenging instead of predictably boring. That showed initiative, technical skill, and a fundamental understanding that established parameters aren't sacred." She released his hand finally. "Also, your disciplinary record is clean, but your equipment access logs show you've been in restricted areas approximately 27 times. You just didn't get caught because you're good at covering your tracks. That's exactly the kind of competent chaos I need in a companion." Ethan tried several responses and settled on, "That's both impressive research and mildly concerning. I'm thorough. It's one of my better qualities." She turned to the coordinator, who was watching with the resigned expression of someone who'd known this would be complicated. "We accept the pairing. When do we start?" The coordinator's reflective patterns shifted to something that might have been relief. "Your joint quarters assignment and first mission briefing are available now. Please," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "try to review safety protocols before beginning any activities." "Of course," Zara said with utterly false sincerity. "We'll be very careful." She was already walking toward the exit before Ethan could say anything else. He hurried to follow, acutely aware of the looks from other students. Jake caught his eye and made a throat-cutting gesture. Maya just looked sympathetic. One student he barely knew actually mouthed, "I'm sorry," at him. This was not inspiring confidence. Their assigned quarters were in the Joint Species Housing Block, a section of the academy designed to accommodate wildly different biological needs. The corridor had modular atmosphere controls, adjustable gravity fields, and enough warning signs about respecting roommate preferences to fill a small handbook. Zara apparently had already moved in, because when they entered the quarters, half the space looked like a contained explosion. Training equipment was stacked in organized but overwhelming piles. Technical manuals in Syrathi script covered one wall. Several items that might have been weapons or might have been unusually aggressive sports equipment hung from modified storage racks. "Your side," Zara said cheerfully, gesturing to the other half of the quarters, which was pristine, untouched, and almost aggressively normal by comparison. "Decorate it however you want. I'll judge your choices, but that's just part of living with me. That's not how roommate dynamics usually work. It is now. First rule of being my companion: everything is more interesting when it's competitive." She threw herself onto her bunk, which was positioned at least 2 feet higher than regulation safety guidelines suggested. "So, Ethan Rivera. Top marks in engineering, decent combat scores despite clearly not loving violence, and you once spent an entire weekend rebuilding a malfunctioning atmospheric processor that maintenance said wasn't worth fixing. Why? Ethan set his bag down slowly, buying time to process that she'd done this much research on him. The processor could have been fixed. They were being lazy, and I don't like waste. Good answer, practical and principled. She swung down from her bunk with liquid grace. My turn. I'm here because my family expects me to do diplomatic service before assuming any authority in our dominion. They think the academy will temper my impulsiveness and teach me cooperation. Her tone made it clear she found this hilarious. Instead, I've been having the time of my life demonstrating that established procedures are usually just habits that people are too lazy to question. What happened to your previous companions? Companion 1 was Centaurian. Couldn't handle that I don't follow schedules or ask permission for things I'm capable of doing myself. Companion 2 was human, decided I should be more refined, and suggested I was making myself unmarriageable by being too aggressive. We did not get along. She said this with profound understatement. Companion 3 was Lyrian, wanted to file violation reports every time I questioned training protocols. Companion 4 was actually promising, a Catharan warrior named Drex who appreciated tactical creativity. But he got reassigned after I may have gotten us both caught in a training exercise that expanded beyond approved parameters. How far beyond approved parameters? We reprogrammed 3 combat drones to stage a mock invasion of the administrative wing. In our defense, it was excellent practical training and security needed the test. She grinned without a trace of remorse. But you're different, Ethan Rivera. You bent rules without breaking them. You questioned systems by improving them. You showed creativity within constraints. That's the partner I need. Ethan sat on his assigned bunk, which was regulation height, and somehow felt boring compared to hers. Or I'll be companion number 5 who couldn't handle you. Maybe, Zara admitted cheerfully, but that would be disappointing. I don't like being disappointed. Her expression turned more serious. Look, I know my reputation. Wild, ungovernable, impossible to partner with, but here's what they don't tell you. I'm not difficult because I enjoy causing problems. I'm difficult because I refuse to accept this is how we've always done it as a sufficient explanation. The galaxy doesn't need more people who follow instructions. It needs people who question whether the instructions still make sense. She pulled up a holographic display showing their first assignment, a joint tactical exercise scheduled for tomorrow morning. Standard infiltration scenario. We're supposed to spend tonight planning approaches and establishing communication protocols. Most pairs will take 6 hours doing this. We'll take 30 minutes because you're smart enough to adapt on the fly, and I'm experienced enough to improvise. Then we're going to sleep, and tomorrow we're going to complete that exercise faster than anyone expects. Sound good? Ethan looked at the assignment, at Zara's confident grin, at the organized chaos of their shared quarters. Every instinct he developed over 3 years of careful academy navigation told him this was a disaster waiting to happen. But another part of him, the part that had hacked simulations out of boredom and rebuilt atmospheric processors that weren't his responsibility, was intrigued. 30 minutes to plan, he said, but I want to understand your combat style first. If we're going to coordinate, I need to know how you move. Zara's grin brightened to something fierce and delighted. See, you're already thinking like a real partner. This is going to be excellent. They spent 32 minutes planning. Ethan asked questions. Zara answered with surprising tactical depth, and together they built a framework that was more guidelines we'll probably deviate from than actual plan. Then Zara declared it sufficient and disappeared, presumably to wherever she went when not being directly supervised. Ethan sat alone in their quarters, looking at Zara's chaotic half and his own blank canvas, and pulled up his messages. Jake had sent, "Rip your GPA and possibly your life. The wild princess ate her last 3 companions alive." Maya wrote, "Heard about your pairing, that's intense, you okay?" His academic advisor sent a formal message about managing expectations and maintaining professional boundaries with challenging companions. And there was one message from an unknown sender that just said, "Good luck, you'll need it." Ethan looked at the tactical exercise plan they'd created in 32 minutes. Unconventional, probably violating half a dozen protocols, and honestly more interesting than any plan he'd have made with a normal companion. He typed back to Jake, "She's definitely not what I expected, but maybe that's not a bad thing." To Maya, "Ask me again in a week if I survive that long." And to his advisor, "Understood, will maintain appropriate standards." Then he started unpacking, making decisions about how to arrange his half of the quarters. Zara had said she'd judge his choices. Fine, he'd give her something worth judging. Tomorrow they had a tactical exercise that would probably involve violating protocols he hadn't even heard of yet. After 3 years of playing it safe, maybe it was time to see what happened when you stopped trying to be normal and just committed to interesting. His mother would be horrified. The academy administration would probably be concerned. His career advisors would definitely have opinions. But for the first time since arriving at the academy, Ethan felt actually excited about what came next. He just hoped that was a good sign, and not evidence that Zara's particular brand of chaos was already contagious. The tactical exercise began at 600 hours, which Ethan had learned was the Academy's favorite time for making students suffer. The simulation bay was already crowded with companion pairs doing what apparently everyone did before these exercises. Extensive preparation, communication drills, equipment checks, and careful review of protocols. Zara showed up 7 minutes late carrying 2 cups of something that smelled vaguely chemical and possibly caffeinated. "For you," she said, handing one to Ethan. "Syrathi morning blend. It'll wake you up or kill you, possibly both." Ethan accepted it cautiously. The liquid inside was a concerning shade of blue. "What's in this?" "If I told you, you'd refuse to drink it. Trust me, it works." She took a long drink from her own cup, apparently unconcerned about potential organ damage. Against his better judgment, Ethan sipped. It tasted like someone had distilled aggression and added sweetener. It also immediately made him feel more alert than he had any right to be at 600 hours. That's horrifying and effective. That's the Syrathi approach to most things. Zara surveyed the simulation bay, watching other pairs run through final preparations. Look at them, so careful, so concerned with following procedures exactly as taught. It's like watching people afraid to actually play the game. The game where we're evaluated on performance and technique. Exactly. They're optimizing for good evaluation scores. We're optimizing for actual success. There's a difference. She finished her drink and crushed the cup with casual strength. "Ready." "We haven't done equipment checks or..." "Your equipment works because you're competent enough to maintain it properly, and mine works because I modified it last week to exceed standard specifications. We're ready." She was already walking toward their assigned simulation entrance. "Trust me, partner, or at least trust that I'm confident enough for both of us." The simulation scenario loaded around them. A hostile facility that they needed to infiltrate, data to retrieve, escape routes to plan. Standard stuff. Other pairs would spend time analyzing the layout, discussing approach vectors, establishing contingencies. Zara spent approximately 15 seconds looking at the tactical display, then grinned. "This is almost too easy. Follow my lead and when I signal, cause chaos. You're good at chaos." "I'm really not." But she was already moving, sprinting toward the first guard position with the kind of reckless confidence that either worked brilliantly or failed spectacularly. Ethan had about 3 seconds to decide. Follow the crazy plan or stand here looking useless. He followed the crazy plan. Zara moved like water and struck like lightning. There was no other way to describe it. The data core was heavily guarded. Standard protocol was to observe, plan, execute carefully. Zara assessed the situation for maybe 5 seconds, then looked at Ethan and mouthed one word. Together. She didn't wait for confirmation. She launched herself directly into the guard formation, and Ethan had exactly 1 second to decide if he was committed to this partnership or not. He was. He triggered every security alert he could reach, turning the facility's own systems into weapons of distraction. Drones turned on each other. Doors locked at random. Alert systems created cascading false alarms. It was beautiful chaos, and it gave Zara exactly the confusion she needed to tear through opponents who were individually more skilled but collectively disoriented. Ethan joined the fight when 3 guards tried to flank her position. His combat training was adequate, not exceptional, but adequate was enough when opponents were already dealing with Zara's assault and his technical sabotage. He fought defensively, keeping threats off her back while she executed the spectacular offensive moves. They extracted the data. They fought their way back out. They completed the entire simulation in 19 minutes and 43 seconds. When they emerged from the sim bay, the instructor, a stern Catharan named Commander Drix, was waiting with an expression that suggested she was experiencing several competing emotions simultaneously. "You completed the objective successfully," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "Your time is exemplary, however." She pulled up their performance recording. "Your methods were highly unconventional. You caused 17 million credits in simulated property damage. You violated 8 different operational protocols. And your strategy, if it can be called that, consisted primarily of move extremely fast and break things." "And yet," Zara said cheerfully, gesturing at the completion time displayed prominently on the board, "fastest time on record for this simulation. That speaks for itself, doesn't it?" Commander Drix's jaw tightened. "Princess Zara, I am aware of your creative approach to training exercises, but your companion," she looked at Ethan, "I expected better judgment from a student with your academic record." Ethan, still catching his breath and somewhat amazed he'd survived, said, "In my defense, Commander, stopping her seemed significantly more dangerous than helping her." Zara laughed with genuine delight, and Ethan noticed other students staring at them with a mixture of awe and concern. "You're both dismissed," Commander Drix said with obvious effort. "But be advised, your methods may be effective, but they are not sustainable. Eventually, this approach will fail, and when it does, the consequences will be severe." Walking back toward quarters, Zara was practically bouncing with satisfaction. "That was excellent. You adapted perfectly, supported my approach without trying to control it, and your technical work was better than expected. We're going to be amazing together." We also violated 8 protocols and got a lecture. Protocols are suggestions for people who lack imagination. We're not those people. She stopped, turning to face him with unusual seriousness. "Listen, Ethan, I know what the Academy teaches: cooperation, established procedures, following protocol. That's fine for standard situations. But real space, real threats, real problems don't follow neat protocols. They require adaptation, creativity, and willingness to take risks. That's what I'm offering you. A partnership that actually prepares you for reality instead of simulations. By breaking rules. By understanding that rules are tools, not constraints. Sometimes the right tool for the job is a rule. Sometimes it's not." She started walking again. "Besides, you enjoyed that, don't lie." Ethan wanted to deny it, but he couldn't honestly. The simulation had been terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Racing through chaos, adapting on the fly, trusting his partner to handle impossibilities while he handled complications. It had felt more real than 3 years of careful, controlled training exercises. "Maybe a little," he admitted. "Excellent, that's the beginning of actual partnership." Zara's expression shifted to something more calculating. "Now, tonight we have our first joint technical project. The assignment is to modify a standard comm device to handle 3 species protocol simultaneously. Standard approach takes 4 days. I think we can do it in one evening if you're willing to skip a few approval processes. That sounds like it violates several equipment use protocols, yes, but the goal is to create a functional device, not to follow procedures. They just assume we'll follow procedures because that's what previous students did. She grinned. We're not previous students. Back in quarters, Ethan's datapad was lighting up with messages. Jake, dude, fastest time on record. What happened to I'll probably get a normal companion? Maya saw the simulation results. You okay? That looked insane. His academic advisor, Mr. Rivera, please schedule a meeting to discuss partnership management strategies. And one message from an engineering instructor. Impressive technical work in today's simulation. Unconventional but effective. See me if you're interested in advanced systems courses. Ethan sat on his bunk, reading messages and watching Zara start unpacking technical equipment for their evening project. She worked with focused intensity, her earlier manic energy channeled into precise preparation. Question, Ethan said. Why did you really request me as companion? Not the official reasons about my simulation modifications. The real reason. Zara didn't stop working, but her ears tilted back slightly, thoughtfulness. Because I watched you for 3 months before making the request. I saw you follow rules in public and bend them in private. I saw you maintain perfect academic standing while secretly working on projects that weren't assigned. I saw you present as normal, compliant, unremarkable, while actually being creative, unconventional, and quietly brilliant. She looked up at him. I saw someone who was pretending to fit in while being capable of so much more. That's exactly the partner I needed. And if I fail to meet those expectations, then you fail and I request companion 6 and we both move on. Her expression was surprisingly gentle. But I don't think you'll fail, Ethan Rivera. I think you're exactly as capable as I believe, and working with me will prove it. To the academy, to your peers, and most importantly to yourself. That evening, they modified a comm device in ways that definitely violated equipment protocols, and possibly broke several laws of engineering thermodynamics. Zara asked sharp technical questions. Ethan provided solutions he'd never have risked implementing with a different partner. They argued about methodology, compromised on approaches, and built something that worked better than the standard model while taking a fraction of the time. At 200 hours, they finally stopped, the device functional and their project complete 3 days ahead of schedule. Sleep, Zara ordered, climbing to her too-high bunk. Tomorrow we have cultural diplomacy training, which is boring but necessary. I'll make it interesting somehow. That's what I'm afraid of. Good, fear keeps you sharp, but she was smiling. You did well today, partner, better than well. You kept up, adapted fast, and trusted me even when it looked insane. That's real partnership. After she fell asleep, instantly, like someone without anxiety, Ethan lay awake thinking about the day. He'd violated protocols, probably damaged his reputation with several instructors, and connected himself to the academy's most notorious student. He'd also had the most engaging, challenging, genuinely exciting day since arriving at the academy 3 years ago. His datapad chimed with one final message, this one from Commander Drix. Your technical work today showed real skill, despite your questionable judgment in applying it. Don't waste that skill trying to impress a partner who may not stay paired with you. Potential means nothing if destroyed through recklessness. Ethan read it twice, then looked at Zara's sleeping form, at their modified comm device sitting on the workbench. At the fastest simulation time, his name would forever be attached to. Maybe Commander Drix was right. Maybe this would end badly. But maybe, just maybe, being normal and safe and carefully unremarkable was the actual waste of potential. Tomorrow he'd worry about consequences. Tonight he'd let himself be satisfied with choosing chaos and finding it suited him better than he'd ever admitted. The problem started in week 3 of their partnership, which Ethan later reflected was actually longer than anyone had bet they'd last. They developed a rhythm. Zara created chaos, Ethan provided structure. She pushed boundaries, he found ways to push them productively. They were scoring well on joint assignments, though their methods continued to horrify approximately 60% of instructors and intrigue the other 40%. But success breeds attention, and attention brings complications. Prince Valorian of Centauria cornered Ethan after advanced systems theory, which Ethan would later recognize as deliberate timing, public enough to be witnessed, private enough to feel like a personal conversation. Rivera, Valorian said, his tone suggesting he was doing Ethan a favor by speaking to him at all. We should discuss your companion's situation. Ethan, who'd learned Syrathi directness from living with Zara, said, "Should we? Or are you about to tell me we should?" Valorian's expression flickered with annoyance before smoothing into practiced concern. "You're intelligent, talented, and have a promising career ahead. But Princess Zara is sabotaging your reputation through association. She's reckless, insubordinate, and her previous companions all failed. I'm offering you an opportunity to transfer before you become her fifth failure." "That's generous. Why do you care?" "Because wasted potential bothers me. You could be paired with someone who complements your strengths rather than exploiting them for her chaotic experiments." Valorian paused, his voice dropping slightly. "I have influence with administration. I could arrange a transfer to a more suitable companion." Ethan studied him. Valorian was perfect academy material, excellent marks, proper conduct, family connections that opened every door. He was also the one Zara had publicly rejected last year. "And this has nothing to do with Zara turning down your courtship proposal." Valorian's expression hardened. "That rejection was a year ago and completely irrelevant. This is about protecting a fellow student from a bad pairing." Interesting interpretation of protection. Ethan gathered his materials. "I appreciate the concern, but I'm satisfied with my current companion." "You're making a mistake. Princess Zara is uncontrollable. She'll drag you down with her, and when this pairing fails, which it will, you'll have nothing to show but damaged reputation and wasted opportunity." "Maybe, but that's my mistake to make." Ethan started to leave, then turned back. "And for what it's worth, Zara isn't uncontrollable. She's just unwilling to be controlled. There's a difference." He reported the conversation to Zara, who received it with delighted laughter. "Valorian is still bitter. That's adorable. I rejected him over a year ago with a perfectly reasonable explanation that his approach to partnership was fundamentally incompatible with any sentient being's happiness. She was calibrating a training drone, making modifications that were definitely unauthorized. He'll try to sabotage us now, probably subtly. He's too worried about his reputation to do anything overt. Should be entertaining." "You're not concerned about Valorian, please. He's predictable, conventional, and thinks influence is a substitute for actual capability." She finished her modifications, and the drone powered up with unusual responsiveness. "Besides, we're better than whatever he'll try, you'll see." The sabotage came during a critical diplomatic simulation, where companion pairs must negotiate a complex trade agreement between three hostile species. It required cultural sensitivity, patience, and precise protocol. Ethan and Zara were paired against Valorian's team in adjacent scenarios. Midway through their negotiation, which was actually going well, Zara demonstrating surprising diplomatic skill when she chose to apply it, their simulation started glitching. Data corruption, translation failures, environmental controls creating uncomfortable conditions. It was subtle enough to seem like random technical failure, but consistent enough to be deliberate. Zara recognized it instantly. "Someone's hacking our scenario. Valorian probably. Can you trace it?" Ethan was already working, his fingers flying across the interface. "Yes, source is their simulation bay. He's using his own scenario to interfere with ours." Most students would report this. Follow proper channels. Let instructors handle it. Zara grinned dangerously. "Can you reverse it?" Probably, but that would mean giving him exactly what he deserves for breaking Academy rule to sabotage fellow students. Do it. Ethan hesitated for exactly 2 seconds, weighing consequences against justice. Then he started coding. If Valorian wanted to play dirty, fine. They could play dirtier. He blocked the interference first, restoring their simulation to proper functionality. Then, because Zara was watching with expectant delight, he created a feedback loop that started introducing subtle errors into Valorian's own scenario: translation glitches, timing delays, environmental discomfort. Their negotiation proceeded smoothly. Valorian's didn't. By the end, Ethan and Zara had successfully brokered a complex three-way agreement. Valorian had somehow managed to insult 2 of 3 species he was negotiating with. The instructor attributed it to stress and complexity, missing the underlying sabotage entirely. But Valorian knew exactly what happened. His expression promised retaliation. "This is escalating," Ethan pointed out that evening, watching Zara practice zero-G combat maneuvers with frightening grace. "Yes, because he escalated first. We're just responding proportionally." She executed a flip that should have been impossible without equipment assistance. "But you're right, he won't stop now. We need to be careful." The real retaliation came during a physical combat exercise in the zero-gravity arena. Companion pairs were matched against each other. Non-lethal weapons only, first incapacitation or surrender ending the match. Standard stuff. Ethan and Zara drew Valorian's pair in the second round. The match should have been straightforward, but something went wrong with Ethan's equipment. His magnetic boots malfunctioned, sending him spinning out of control, and his comms cut out simultaneously. Zara abandoned her combat objective instantly, launching herself toward Ethan with precision that would have been beautiful if the situation weren't so urgent. She caught him mid-spin, stabilized his rotation, and manually overrode his boots using techniques that were definitely not Academy-approved, but extremely effective. "Can you fight?" she asked through their restored link, her voice cold with controlled fury. "Yeah, but Valorian just crossed a line. Equipment sabotage in zero-G can kill people. That's not competition anymore. That's attempted harm." She positioned them back-to-back, her combat readiness palpable. "Stay with me. We're finishing this fast." What followed wasn't a training exercise. It was a demonstration. Zara moved through zero-G like she was born to it, her combat style perfectly adapted to the environment. But instead of simply winning, she maneuvered Valorian into positions that exposed his sabotage tactics, documenting evidence with her suit's recording systems. The match ended in under 3 minutes with Zara's decisive victory. She immediately submitted the documentation to Commander Drix, whose expression went from stern to furious as she reviewed the evidence. Valorian was censured, lost several privileges, and was formally warned that further violations would result in expulsion. His family's influence protected him from worse consequences, but his reputation took serious damage. That evening, Ethan found Zara on the observation deck, watching stars wheel past with unusual quietness. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't like people threatening my companion." Her voice was flat, controlled. Previous pairings failed for various reasons, but they failed safely. "Valorian put you in actual danger today. That's not acceptable." "You handled it." "I had to. That's what partners do, protect each other." She looked at him directly, her eyes intense. "You could request a transfer now. No shame in it. Valorian will hold a grudge, and being my companion makes you a target." Ethan had actually considered this. Walking away would be safer, easier. He could get paired with someone normal, complete his final year without incident, launch his career safely. "You know what I realized today?" he said instead. "When my equipment failed and I was spinning out of control, my first thought wasn't, why did this happen? It was, Zara will fix this. I trusted you completely without even thinking about it. That's not nothing." Her ears tilted forward, surprise mixed with something softer. "That's actually quite touching for a human." Besides, Ethan continued, boring companions don't make enemies. If Valorian hates us, we must be doing something right. Zara laughed, tension breaking. That's my influence talking. You're becoming properly chaotic. Maybe, or maybe I'm just learning that following all the rules is overrated. He stood, offering her a hand up. Come on, partner. Let's go do something productive that technically violates equipment use protocols. I find creative engineering therapeutic after stressful days. They spent the evening in the lab, legitimately this time, working on an approved project but improving it in ways that would make instructors simultaneously proud and concerned. Zara asked questions about human engineering philosophy. Ethan asked about Syrathi combat theory. They argued about methodology, laughed about Valorian's downfall, and built something together that was better than either could have made alone. Walking back to quarters at midnight, Ethan got a message from Maya. Heard what happened in combat training. You okay? Also, heard the wild princess went absolutely feral protecting you. People are talking. He glanced at Zara, who was humming what was probably a Syrathi victory song. Yeah, I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. Because somewhere between the chaos and the rule-breaking and the political sabotage, Ethan had realized something important. Zara wasn't wild and ungovernable. She was fiercely independent, yes, but she was also loyal, protective, and willing to face serious consequences to protect her companion. That wasn't chaos. That was exactly the kind of partner worth keeping. The final examination for fourth-year companions was announced with appropriate drama, a week-long mission in actual space, handling a real diplomatic crisis on a frontier station. No simulations, no resets, real consequences. Every companion pair would be evaluated on teamwork, problem-solving, cultural sensitivity, and ability to handle genuine complications. Ethan and Zara received their assignment 3 days before departure. Mediate a mining dispute on outpost Keldar between 3 species, Catharan miners, Veridian traders, and human settlers. The briefing made it sound straightforward. The historical notes made it clear this was anything but perfect, Zara said, reading through previous Academy attempts at this mission. They gave us the impossible assignment. 4 previous companion pairs have tried this. All failed. One ended in property damage. Another caused a diplomatic incident that took months to resolve. That's not encouraging. It's excellent. Low expectations mean we can only exceed them. She grinned with genuine excitement. Plus, real space, real problems. This is what we've actually been training for. The 3-day journey to Outpost Keldar on an Academy transport gave them time to prepare. Ethan researched the dispute exhaustively. It involved resource rights, ancestral territorial claims, and decades of accumulated grievances layered on top of each other like geological strata. The more he read, the more complicated it became. Zara, meanwhile, spent her time learning to pilot from the transport crew, practicing zero-G maneuvers, and occasionally checking in on Ethan's research. You should be studying the case files, Ethan pointed out after finding her in the pilot's cabin for the 3rd time. I'll learn more talking to actual people on the station than reading reports written by people who have never been there. She executed a minor course correction that made the pilot nervous, but explained the basics. You're better at synthesizing complex information. They spent an evening going over everything. Ethan laid out the technical details, the legal precedents, the historical grievances. Zara asked sharp questions that cut through diplomatic language to expose actual motivations underneath. So the real issue isn't resources, she said finally. It's trust. None of these groups believe the others will honor agreements, so they're all trying to secure maximum advantage before inevitable betrayal. Basically, yes. Then we solve the trust problem, not the resource problem. Her expression turned calculating. Can you build a monitoring system, something automated that enforces fair distribution without requiring anyone to trust each other? Ethan pulled up technical specs of the disputed area. Maybe. It would be complicated, and we'd need access to equipment I'm not sure the station has. Leave equipment access to me. You focus on design. She was already making notes. We have 3 days, let's use them. Outpost Keldar was exactly as rough as the briefing suggested. A collection of structures held together by determination and questionable engineering, orbiting a resource-rich asteroid belt. The station administrator, a tired-looking human named Chen, greeted them with obvious skepticism. Academy sent kids. He looked them over. No offense, but the last team nearly got themselves killed trying to mediate this mess. We're not the last team, Zara said simply. Where can we meet with faction leaders? The first negotiation session was a disaster. The 3 faction leaders, Catharan warrior Draxus, Veridian merchant Tessara, and human settler representative Rodriguez, wouldn't speak directly to each other. Each had grievances dating back years. Each was convinced the others were planning betrayal. One faction leader walked out mid-sentence when another made a suggestion. Back in their assigned quarters, Ethan said, "Traditional diplomacy isn't working." Because traditional diplomacy assumes good faith, these people have zero faith in each other. Zara pulled up scans of the mining area. We implement the monitoring system. Give them a tool that removes the need. We'd need to build it. We have maybe 4 days. Then we start now. They spent the next 70 hours in a maintenance bay that Administrator Chen reluctantly gave them access to. Zara negotiated, sometimes through proper channels, sometimes through creative interpretation of resource allocation, access to parts they needed. Ethan designed and built, pushing his engineering skills to their absolute limits. When they weren't building, they were talking to station residents individually. Zara had a gift for getting people to open up. She was direct, didn't condescend, and actually listened. Ethan provided technical help with unrelated problems, building goodwill one fixed atmospheric regulator at a time. On day 5, operating on maybe 6 hours of sleep total, they presented their solution. An automated monitoring system that tracked resource extraction, ensured fair distribution based on agreed parameters, and maintained transparent records accessible to all factions. "You're asking us to trust a machine," Draxus said, his skepticism obvious. "No," Zara corrected. "We're giving you a tool that removes the need for trust. You don't have to trust each other, just mathematics and transparent verification." Much easier. Tessara studied the technical specifications. "This can't be manipulated." "Not without it being immediately obvious to all parties," Ethan confirmed. "I designed it with redundancies and verification systems that would make Academy security jealous. It's tamper-evident and self-auditing." Rodriguez looked between the system specs and his fellow faction leaders. "And if we agree to trial this, then you implement it for 30 days, Zara said. "If it works, you extend. If it fails, you're no worse off than you are now. But given that your alternative is continued conflict that benefits absolutely no one, this seems like minimal risk." It wasn't immediate agreement. It took 2 more days of negotiations, technical demonstrations, and Ethan fine-tuning the system to address specific concerns. But slowly, grudgingly, consensus built. The system was installed on day 7, activated, tested. The factions agreed to a 30-day trial period. Administrator Chen watched the activation with disbelief. "You actually did it. 4 previous Academy teams couldn't make any progress, and you too built a solution from scratch." "We didn't follow the traditional diplomatic approach," Ethan said, exhausted but satisfied. "We solved the actual problem instead of the theoretical one," Zara added. "Also, we're very good." Commander Drix's message arrived that evening. Unconventional methods, excessive independence, questionable adherence to diplomatic protocols. Also, mission successful beyond expectations. Recommend commendation for innovative problem-solving. Well done. On the transport back to the Academy, Ethan and Zara both collapsed in the common area. Zara fell asleep mid-sentence, her usual boundless energy finally depleted. Ethan covered her with a blanket and sat nearby, writing their mission report. Maya's message came through. Heard you actually solved the Keldar dispute that's defeated everyone else. Instructors apparently don't know whether to celebrate or be horrified by your methods. How's life with the wild princess? Ethan looked at Zara, who in sleep looked less like a chaotic force and more like someone who carried enormous expectations and refused to let them slow her down. He thought about the past months, the chaos, the rule-breaking, the unexpected loyalty and fierce partnership. He typed, "She's not wild. She's honest about who she is and refuses to apologize for it." Turns out that's exactly what I needed. The Academy return was marked by celebration. They were one of only 3 companion pairs to successfully complete their frontier assignments. Their methods were debated in multiple classes. Some instructors held them up as examples of innovative thinking. Others used them as cautionary tales about excessive independence. At graduation, Ethan and Zara received recognition for exceptional companion partnership. Prince Valorian glared from the audience, his resentment palpable. Commander Drix actually smiled, which several students found more alarming than her usual sternness. After the ceremony, Zara found Ethan on the observation deck. "So, partner, we've completed Academy requirements. Our companion contract is technically fulfilled. We could go our separate ways now." Ethan had been thinking about this for weeks. We could make this permanent. Join one of the exploration services together. That's what I was hoping you'd say. Her grin was fierce and delighted. I've had 3 offers from different organizations. All of them want us specifically. Apparently, innovative problem solvers who achieve results through unconventional means is in demand. I can't imagine why. It's almost like the galaxy needs people who can adapt instead of just following established procedures. She extended her hand, the Syrathi companion oath. "What do you say, Ethan Rivera? Want to keep being my partner in productive chaos?" Ethan took her hand without hesitation. "Someone needs to make sure your chaos stays productive. Might as well be me." They shook, and Ethan felt the weight of it, not an assignment but a choice. They'd built something real through chaos and trust and the willingness to face impossible situations together. "Besides," he added, "life got significantly more interesting once I stopped trying to be normal. Turns out I like interesting." "That's my influence," Zara said proudly. "Maybe. Or maybe I was always slightly chaotic and just needed permission to admit it." They stood together, watching stars they'd soon be traveling among, ready to bring their particular approach to problems that needed exactly their unconventional solutions. "Thank you," Zara said quietly, "for not requesting a transfer when you had multiple chances, for trusting me even when I was being particularly chaotic, for being the first companion who became a real partner. Thank you for requesting me specifically, for teaching me that rules are tools, not constraints, for having my back when things got dangerous." Ethan paused, "For being exactly as wild as everyone said and showing me that was actually a strength." She laughed bright and free. "We're going to be amazing out there." "We already are." And as they prepared to board their new ship, an exploration vessel that needed exactly their combination of technical skill and tactical creativity, Ethan reflected on the question that had started everything. Why was he paired with a wild alien princess when everyone else got normal companions? The answer was clear now, because normal was never going to be enough. Not for him, not for her, not for the galaxy that needed people willing to question whether the way things had always been done was actually the best way. Sometimes the most unusual pairings create the strongest partnerships. Sometimes chaos and structure combine into something more effective than either alone. Sometimes the wild princess and the careful engineer are exactly what each other needs. They boarded their ship together, partners by choice, not assignment, ready to face whatever the galaxy